Previous guest writes the first question. I'm going to go ahead and turn that over to you.
All right, let's go. All right, so the question is, what is the purpose of life? And can one find or create their purpose in life? Well, that doesn't go too quietly. Look, that's obviously
very surface level question.
Obviously that's a very profound question. I actually do have a good answer. I mean, we think about this kind of stuff, and for me, the purpose of life is the journey. Right? So many people get caught up on the goals in life and reaching certain things and reaching certain statures and either financial gain, and they're trying to say that's the purpose of life. Purpose of life, in my opinion, is the journey. Tony Robbins once said, we need to start exchanging expectation for appreciation and appreciate where we're at in the moment, because life is finite. So if we're always trying to look ahead, you're missing the here and now. And quite frankly, it's just being fulfilled. And fulfillment is your own individual definition of fulfillment. I've heard people say, oh, well, you need to be successful. If you want to be, enjoy your life, you need to be successful. What is the definition of success? That's kind of a broad statement. In my opinion, I've seen some of the most wealthiest millionaires and billionaires out there be the most miserable people on the planet. But yet I've seen some of the most humble, very, very grassroots people be the happiest people. So I guess the long answer to that short question is it's the journey.
Along those lines, though, of having that definition of what the meaning of life is. Mm-hmm. Like me, you've had some laps around the sun. You're older. Do you think the 20-year-old you, not that you couldn't come up with the same definition, could you appreciate the same definition?
No, I don't think so, because I think that the part of the journey is you're in constant change. And there's a reason why we're always sitting there saying, if I only knew then what I know now. I mean, that's an age-old answer for that reason, because, we are different people. I am not the same man I was in my 20s. That'll lead me actually into the reason why, I've been married it'll be going on 28 years, and I'm very proud of that. And my wife and I, she's become my absolute everything. But it hasn't always been that way, right? It's 28 years. They always call it the 7-year itch, and they always kind of equate it to guys going out or girls going out and being not honoring the marriage. I actually think that the reason why they call that is actually that every 7 years you go through changes, right? I mean, you and your wife, are y'all the same people you were when you got married?
No.
Right. And so same thing. So my theory is that roughly around 7 years, every 6 to 8 years, not an exact science, you have to kind of reevaluate where you're at in life and make sure that your life partner is still compatible with you. And that's the reason why a lot of people just quit kind of easily, if you ask me. Whereas me and my wife, I could look back in our marriage and I could tell you every about 7 years, we've got a kind of a rough spot. We had to kind of battle through it and say, is this still worth it for us? And thankfully, and I'm very blessed, we're still rocking it today. But to go back to your question about on your 20s, that kind of alludes to why that is. I'm 52 now. I am by far not the same person I was in my 20s.
We're going to get into this because you work with veterans.
I do.
Taking the cynical side to it, though, mm-hmm. Could you get too mired in making sure that you're enjoying and appreciating today, and you actually don't think or look at the future and what you need to get to in the future?
No, I maybe this is just, I call it wisdom. I feel like once I've hit my 50s, it was kind of a little switch went off of me where I don't know if this is a rated G version, but my given F meter is kind of tapped out, right? And I just believe in that I'm not worried about what the future holds. I am doing the best I know now, and I'm a firm believer that if I'm just righteous about my journey, then what God's plan is for me will come through. I actually get blessed every day. I mean, every male in my family actually died of cancer in their 50s. So from my mortality standpoint, my dad passed away at 56, only 4 years from my current age. So I live every day to the fullest. I have gotten away from really being concerned. I used to be such a yes person. Like, I always want to make everybody happy. I always want to make sure everybody is happy with me and what I did. And I've gotten to a point now where I just be me, and you either love me or leave me, and that's okay. I used to be really, really concerned with what other people thought of me, and it really gave me a lot of anxiety. A couple of years ago, that kind of came to a crashing reality, and that's where I had a bit of a wake up call, if you will. And I think we mentioned this off camera before. I went through a really rough time back in 2022, and it really put life into perspective. So again, to think in the future, I have goals. I mean, I'm going to say I have goals on my new company and my things. And I guess if I'm really looking for something that I'm hoping for in the future, is I want to, kind of like you and why you do this podcast, I want to impact as many lives as I can in a positive way, whatever that looks like. Right now, I have pretty much two endeavors, right? I have my new company, Military Operated Real Estate, that I'm really hoping will help change the lives of a lot of people in that space. And then I wrote the book, again, to really impact veterans with their financial literacy.
The reason why I asked from a cynical perspective, because one of the things that I try to do with this podcast is that the importance of striking that balance while you work through these careers, veteran, first responder on my side. We talk about wisdom and the benefits of getting older, and you start seeing things differently. I obviously see and have a perspective of advice from the old guy who's been there, done that, and now looking back on it. And I want the young men and women who are coming into these careers to find that balance. Mm-hmm. Yes, there's so many cool things. There's so many fun things that these careers offer you the ability to do. And it's real easy to get hyper-focused on just what you're doing today and lose focus of the bigger picture. And the analogy that I'll use is it's real easy to get on those 100-mile-an-hour teams, kicking doors, doing all that stuff, but it has very little carryover for when these careers end.
Yes.
And so when I'm talking about balance, it's do all the fun things, take advantage of everything these careers offer, but at the same token, you need to be thinking about your tomorrow. Mm-hmm. And if you're not thinking about it, you'll get to your tomorrow and go, well, shit, now what? Mm-hmm. And so that's what I was saying. From like a cynical perspective, you could go one way or the other. You could get so hyper fixated on transition and what am I going to do tomorrow that you forget that have fun today.
Yeah.
Whereas probably the more common thing is you just get hyper fixated, or you focus on what you're doing today and you really worry about tomorrow.
Right. Well, I think there's a balance. There's a saying that I was actually, my guys that used to work for me gave me a nickname, and they called me Method Man because I always said,
great rapper.
I have a method to my madness was my phrase that I always told my guys. And one of the other sayings that I always did, I'm a master of isms, by the way. I have all kinds of isms. And my other ism that went along with that was, if you want to create balance in what you're doing, you need to be the jack of all trades, but master of one, right? The old saying, jack of all trades, master of none.
Each of us is on the grind. It's that early alarm, the extra rep, the drive that doesn't quit. Grind, spelt GRND, is the mindset that pushes you to go further when most people stop. Founded by a former Army Ranger, Grind Activewear is built on one simple mission: give 100% and then some more. Every piece of clothing is functional, durable, and made for people who outwork the rest. On the field, in the gym, or wherever you're building your next lane. This isn't just clothing. It's commitment woven into fabric, rooted in American grit and culture. Because when you wear Grind, you're not just wearing a logo. You're representing effort, discipline, and purpose. Check out thegrndcollective.com and use the promo code TRANSITION15 for 15% off your order. You're already on the grind. Now wear it.
I switch that up a little bit and say jack of all trades, master of one. And that is, pick your one thing and focus on that, but don't forget about the ancillary things in your life, right? And that'll lead to another one that I'm a big believer of. And I learned this from a good mentor of mine, Larry Broughton. He's a retired Green Beret, now is a very successful entrepreneur. And he once said, if you really want to be successful in life and find that balance that you're looking for ahead, is live your life in thirds. What does that mean? It means that, okay, kind of to what you were just talking about, like you want to look in the here and now, but look about the future too. Well, how do you get to that next step? And that is, if you live your life in thirds, spend a third of your life hanging out with the people who've already achieved whatever you're trying to achieve in life. Pick your poison, whether it's building a podcast, right? Well, you probably have gotten to know some people who have already done the podcasting, right? For me, I always want to find that person who's already trying to have built a business in my space. If you're in the military or you're in the law enforcement, if you want to become like a captain or a commander or something like that, go find that mentor. Spend a third of your life doing that, right? Always be a student, because I'm a big believer that the minute you stop learning is the minute you start dying. And everybody knows something you don't. So the second part of life is spend it with your friends, families, and peers. We have in a lot of our services, I think law enforcement is probably similar. We have about a 60 to 70% divorce rate. And the reason why that is because we sometimes get so focused on that career, that thing that you're doing, that we forget about those who got us there and the people that are along the ride for us, right? My wife is going to be there long after my businesses and careers are over. So spend a third of your life making sure you spend time with them. Then the last third of your life is spend with the people who are trying to achieve what you've already achieved, right? In other words, pay it forward. Pour into those people who are trying to come up. Like right now, for example, I've literally been texting with a buddy of mine's son who is 25 and just made a decision he wants to get into real estate. So what am I doing? I'm having meetings with him and everything else. Is there any form of compensation for this? Absolutely not. I don't care. But I'm looking to spend a third of my life helping pour into those people who are trying to make it up in whatever they find their individual definition of success to look like.
I find myself now really, when I think about these episodes, and I think especially in my solo episodes where I talk about transition tips, I really find myself almost kind of fixating on that younger man or woman who's new in this career or these careers, because I think that's exactly like what you said. I've done it. I've been there. I've jumped off the train. Now let me be a point of reference for somebody who's jumping on or is just starting the ride on the train. The other thing I will add to what you were saying in that second third, the unfortunate thing about these careers, though, is they build in isolation.
They do.
Even if you don't intentionally, let's not even take the outside world. Let's just take your inside world, your immediate family. These jobs tend to take us away from our families for extended periods or awkward periods. If you're married to your spouse who has a typical Monday through Friday job with the weekends off, that's not necessarily going to be your career. If you're a veteran or in the military, you're going to be deployed for X number of times. So now there's going to be periods of 6 months, 8 months, a year where you're completely away from your family. And so you really have to work on that relationship aspect while you're in it. Combined with, I'm a big believer in, do everything you can to not insulate yourself in these careers. Keep those friends and acquaintances that you had before you came into this career to stay what I'll call normal.
Absolutely. And you think about that, talk about transitioning, right? I mean, I know when I transitioned out of the military, I spent 24 years in the military. I was married for a very large chunk of that. And yes, I did a lot of deployments and stuff. So one of the biggest transitions we had is when I got out.
You were home now.
And I'm home. and I'm like, why are we doing things this way? Why are we doing things that way? And that did not go over well. And that was a mistake on my part, because I have to respect that she did this without me. And I'm a big believer that the spouse, whether the military spouse or your first responder spouse, we're the ones that go out there. They have to sit back, take care of everything on the homestead, and then wonder if we're going to come back. Let's be real. We are all in jobs that have a potential of us not coming home. And if you don't think that our spouses have to live that with that day to day, oh my gosh, it's just, so, I think to touch on what you're saying with transition, I mean, that is one of the biggest things that sometimes we forget about, that we're like, oh, well, I'm doing my thing. And then you come home and now you're not doing your thing. And now you're trying to reintegrate yourself into something that's already existing. So I think it's just very important for the service members to consider that when you are transitioning to, think about, the other person. Always put yourself in their shoes before you pass judgment, because that's where a lot of conflict happens in relationships, is when they don't consider what the other person is thinking and what they're doing.
Well, you're back to being the new guy in the squad space. Your spouse has a routine, and you coming in and trying to offer suggestions or make any changes, you're just messing with the apple cart.
Yep, absolutely, man. I couldn't agree with you more, man. And that's where I think that, people talk about balance, right? And they say that, if you want to be successful, there is no balance. There's people that are out there, and, I don't know. I disagree. I think there can be balance, but you just got to find it. And now the balance is not always the same, right? And, balance is not always 50-50, right? And that goes to where, and I know it's probably going into more relationship stuff, but, in any relationship, not just your marriage, but it can be a coworker or anything like that, it's not 50-50. It's one day it might be 50-50. The next day it might be 90-10. And then maybe you have to switch, right? It's just about who's willing to put in that effort, who needs the extra effort. Just yesterday morning, not an exaggeration. If you ever woke up, I don't know about you, I've suffered from PTSD from the military, right? And I just sometimes wake up with anxiety. No reason for it whatsoever. I just wake up with anxiety, and it can be debilitating, right? And my wife and I have gotten really comfortable with just saying when we're feeling that way. And we were out walking yesterday, and I told her that I was feeling that way. And then she kind of, she has her own burden she deals with, but instead she kind of goes, you know what? I'm sorry you go. Like, she really provided that moral support that I needed at that time. And then guess what? Today my wife is dealing with a migraine. So guess what I had to do? I had to kind of lift up and be her part and be her support element for what she's going through. And I think if we can consider those things, that can help in any relationship, not just a marriage.
I like to take my guests on a full journey.
Okay.
So for you, I'm going, as with all my guests. And I really believe that for the people listening, I think it helps cement your story when they know more about you. So I want to take you back to the beginning.
Tell me.
Where's hometown? Where'd you grow up?
Sure. Born and raised in Richmond, Virginia. Came from very humble beginnings. Parents got divorced when I was 5. I grew up and, just playing a weekend warrior with my parents every other weekend.
Were your mom and dad generational to the Richmond area?
No, well, they're from Richmond, but very, very humble. Like, I'm talking.
No, I mean, like, do you go back like grandparents, great grandparents, in that region?
Oh, in Virginia. Actually, I can even trace. That's the fun part. Actually, I actually still own our family owns still. The Winfields can actually be traced all the way back to the King of England back in the 1600s. We were actually awarded a large plot of Virginia as the state. Back in, before we were even a country. And now, of course, over the years, married out. We have about 200 acres left in south of Richmond, south of Petersburg. And there's a Winfield Lane and everything with that. So yes, my family goes back literally generations in Virginia. I'm also, growing up with a single mom, we did the best we could. I started working when I was 14 years old. I had 17 different jobs from age 14 to 19, trying to find my path. I went through all the struggles like probably every other, struggling kid did. I was the rebel without a clue, I wasn't always I think we talk about this. I think sometimes the best law enforcement, because, I was in law enforcement in the military, I was an MP. And I think sometimes the best cops out there are the ones that maybe didn't always be the model citizen you see before you today. And that was me as growing up. I went through my rebellious years.
Do you have brothers and sisters?
I don't. I'm an only child. Closest thing I have is I had 4 stepsisters, but both my dad and my stepmom have since passed, so we're not as close as we used to be. But yeah, no, I grew up as an only child, and
primarily with mom.
Yeah, primarily with mom, and lived with my dad for about a year, my senior year, and then I raised my, I fell in that kind of that situation where I got accepted to go to university to actually learn how to fly airplanes, and didn't. My parents made just too much money for me to qualify for financial aid, but not enough money to actually send me to college. So that kind of forced my hand to join the military. I ended up being the first person in my entire family to ever join the military.
Where does the desire to fly come from?
Well, the desire to fly came from when I was going through my kind of rebellious years. They came up with this new program in high school. So you know how you can go to VOTEC, a vocational school, and you learn wood shop, mechanics. Well, in my junior year, they launched the first ever pilot training program in high school, and I was the first of one of 20 people to get accepted into that pilot program. So I literally learned how to fly airplanes in high school. So, of course, I loved it. We absolutely fell in love with flying. Unfortunately, I never did end up getting my pilot's license because I graduated and needed to go off to the military before I could finish it. But it gave me that kind of itch to do it. Now, unfortunately, it's funny how life trained you, right? I was thinking I was going to be a pilot my entire life for the rest of my life and end up pivoting, joining the military. Next thing you know, I joined to be an aircrew SAR swimmer. I'm supposed to be jumping out of airplanes, saving people, all that. But right before I graduated boot camp, they said, oh, you had this sinusitis like 6 years ago? Yeah, you can't do that anymore. Go find another job. I'm like, oh, I don't want to do that. I'm going to get out now. They're like, no, that's your problem, not ours. Go find another job. So I became what's called an operations specialist at first. And that's like a radar operator. Hated it. Like staring at a screen for 12 hours a day on a ship. No, that wasn't my jam. So then I
did you even go through that A school?
I did. I went through that A school and I actually graduated undergrad. I was the number one in my class, but I still didn't like it. So I did that for about 3.5 years. And then I met our chief master at arms, who was basically the sheriff of the ship. And he just turned me on to and I just watched what he did and he became a mentor of mine. So I converted to master at arms back in 1995.
Taking you back though.
96.
Start going to a VOTEC classes, learn to fly while you're in high school. You get the desire, hey, I want to go fly airplanes. The original college that you were looking at was a civilian, kind of like an Embry-Riddle type?
It was actually Aviation University. The two biggest aviation universities in the country are Embry-Riddle and Aviation.
Okay.
And so I got accepted to Aviation, but it's an expensive school.
When you can't get in due to finances, where I'm going with this is, had the military even been on your radar to that point?
Nope. No, not at all.
Anybody in your family that served, anything? Nope. So you had no connection to the military?
Zero. I joined the military out of necessity.
Did you examine the academies?
Nope. No, because you needed to go to college. It was the catch-22. To get into the academies, you either need to know somebody or you need to have get accepted into that program. And it just never, again, I didn't make any decisions. A lot of times you got to thinking about that when you're a junior. Right. I didn't think about anything until my senior year. So I kind of missed the boat on that, even if I wanted to consider it. But no, I didn't think about the military at all until I was forced to all right, I'm not going to college. What am I going to do with my life? I was working, delivering pizzas. I was like, I knew I didn't want to do that. So, typical recruiter came to the high school and like, you should join. I'm like, let me check it out. And
did you check out all the branches or just focus on the Navy right away?
I think I pretty much focused on the Navy. I met the recruiter. Of course, what's the old saying? My recruiter said. It wasn't always everything they said it was going to be. But, with anything, I made the best of it. As a matter of fact, when I did join and when I got, because actually me and my best friend, he's really my brother. We're best friend in the fact that him and I, he moved in with me and my family. My family kind of unofficially adopted him for our junior and senior year of high school. We actually joined the Navy together to be in the buddy system. But typical young guys, he had some girls in his life and we weren't spending as much time. And I'm a very impatient person. I'm like, you know what? I'm ready to go. So we were supposed to leave in December of 92. I called him, my recruiter, and said, and we were going to be joining, by the way, as undesignated, meaning we didn't have a solidified job. We got talked into.
That's a perfect plan.
Yeah, you can join. And then once you're in, you can pick your job once you're in. We all know that's kind of a.
I think you're the only one who's ever been told that.
Yeah, right. Exactly. I remember, I'll never forget my first day in boot camp. We went to the classroom and it said, I had a big circle with a cross through it saying, my recruiter said. So I ended up. So when I got kicked out of the aircrew SAR swimmer school, I was very mad at the world and the Navy, and I wanted out. And I had a whole FTN. You ever heard of the FTN acronym? F the Navy. And I really had a bad attitude.
How did you like going back to getting into boot camp and just being in the Navy in general, how did you like the structure of it and everything around it?
I didn't at first. And I guess that's my point, is just like I had an issue earlier in high school, being a little bit of a rebel when I got in the Navy, and I got that kind of bad attitude because I wasn't being given what I was told I was going to be given. I had a really just rough attitude, but I did end up going to be, I was able to change jobs to what's called an operations specialist. The only reason why I picked that, because when they said kick you out of it, they literally give you a sheet of paper.
Pick one.
With a 1 paragraph description of the job. And they said, you got 30 minutes, pick your next job. This is what's supposed to be my entire future. I'm supposed to pick off a paragraph. So I picked operations specialist because it said that there was an opportunity for me to control aircraft. Because they have air intercept controllers in that rating. So I'm like, all right, well, let's just do that. I didn't really have any motivation. I went actually off to A school, and I was just like, oh, why am I here? And I'll never forget this. This is where sometimes we get motivated by some of the oddest things. There was a really cocky other sailor in our class. And very first week, this guy was like, the heck with all you guys. I'm going to be the honor graduate, because the honor graduate got a meritorious promotion. And he's like, I'm going to be the honor grad, and the heck with all you. He's just a real cocky dude. And I took offense by it. So I used that as my motivation to kind of buckle down. And I actually studied, and I ended up becoming the honor grad. And so it was good. It was a good little justification on my part. Now, I still didn't love the Navy at that point. And I went off to my first ship, and again, not the greatest experience, right? They're like, hey, welcome aboard. And we were in the dry docks at the time. They're like, welcome aboard. Here's your needle gun. Get up on the superstructure. And I spent my first 3 months in the Navy sitting up there, whole body tingling at the end of each day.
Where was this at?
It was in Norfolk. And that was the other thing, right? A little frustration behind me. I joined the Navy.
See the world.
I know. I joined the Navy literally to get away from Virginia, but I didn't read the fine print where the largest naval base in the world is in Virginia. So, and sure enough, I was either in Norfolk or overseas. Norfolk, overseas. Norfolk, overseas. Like, I'll never forget one time. This is now fast forward. I was now fully into law enforcement. I had a couple of. I was stationed in Greece with my wife, and then we came back for a tour, and then we went back over to Italy to a place called Gaeta, and that's where I was a bodyguard. And when we left there, when I finally got a chance, and like, hey, I picked orders to go to Maine. Finally getting away from Virginia. I'm talking, all my stuff was packed up on a boat heading to Maine, and I got promoted. Yay, ha, right? Great job. I made Chief Petty Officer, and they're like, all right, congratulations, you made Chief. By the way, we don't need a chief in Maine. So here's your choice. You got Norfolk, Norfolk, or Norfolk. Which one do you want?
Never thought, even tried to get onto the West Coast?
Well, I tried every time, but it was when you
needs of the Navy.
It's the needs of the Navy. You go where they tell you they need to go. So it actually wasn't until 2000. So of course came back to Norfolk, did another 3 years there. Then I got orders back to Sicily, and we brought our family there. And at the end of that one, I finally was able to negotiate orders, and I pre-commissioned the USS San Diego here in San Diego. And I moved here in 2009 and haven't left.
How many years were you in at that point?
Let's see. I joined in 1992. So, yeah, I'm not good at math. 17 years? Something like that. Because I did 24. And so I did another, I think, 7 years here in San Diego before I retired. I retired in 2016.
Of all your duty stations, which one did you like the most?
I think it would probably be a cross between, I'd say, 3 different ones, and I would say them for all different reasons.
Don't be definitive.
No. Well, you can't, because I don't think, because they always say your current command, your worst command, your last command, your best command, right? For me, if I look back and truly honest about myself, I love being a bodyguard. That was a great tour of duty over in Italy. We had just had our son at the time. And it was just a cool experience. I mean, it went from my worst command to my best command. And the reason, it's a whole long story. I checked in, there's like, oh yeah, welcome aboard, joining the team. Oh, by the way, we reported the admiral for fraud, waste, and abuse. And literally a week later, the admiral disbanded the entire security detail because the security detail reported him to the IG. And so I spent my first year as a facilities manager basically supervising janitors.
If you're like me and you love your coffee, my go-to lately has been Blue Line Roasting. They're a Tennessee-based and law enforcement-owned company, roasting small batches of premium beans. You've got choices from Patriot, which is their light roast, to Failure Drill, their dark roast. They roast all their beans fresh, within 48 hours, and ship them to you even faster. You can also get your beans ground for you or delivered whole. Your choice. But here's the cool part. A portion of what you spend goes to support law enforcement families dealing with the impact of line-of-duty injuries or loss. You get an incredible coffee, and they get the help they need. Choose a single bag, a sample pack, or start a subscription so you're never out of coffee. Oh, and shipping is always free. Also, for the listeners of this podcast, use the promo code TRANSITION10 to get 10% off your purchase. So head over to bluelineroasting.com and make every cup count.
But then I slowly built the team back up, and by the time we left, we had reestablished, we became fully credentialed with NCIS. So it was a very rewarding 3 years of going from, starting all over and building something up. So that was fun. Then I think
Does every base or duty station have a dignitary team component?
No, it's just where the VIP is stationed. So in Gaeta, Italy, where the 6th Fleet Admiral was stationed. I think now he's currently in Portugal, I believe, in Naples, but I don't think they live there anymore. They've downsized that. But yeah, it was an amazing duty station. We're talking a resort town in the middle of Italy on the West Coast. Every day I was just walking out like, oh my gosh, I live here. It was absolutely breathtaking every day. And then I think my second tour, the one that I made the most lifelong friends was when we were stationed in Sicily, because we lived on base. I'm not a big fan of living on base, but when we did, because you had to in Sicily. And so you become really close with all the people on there. And it turns out that my entire security department, all my bosses actually lived right next to me. So it was a blessing and a curse. But that was, I'm still great friends with everybody who we were stationed with to this day.
Now, is it mandated to live on base in Sicily because of the limited available housing?
Yes. Well, it's because they have housing units, and when they made it optional, of course, people are like, well, I'm gonna go live out in town. And so the government pays for that housing, whether it's being used or not. So they required it that it had to be full before you could go out in town.
Got it.
So we spent 3 years there. And again, we're not ones that get stuck. Me and my wife is European. My wife is Swedish. So we met in Greece, and because I was stationed there for a year. And so we always loved going to live in the culture. So I got to learn Italian while I was there. So it was just a great tour. And then the last one was probably my last tour, because my pinnacle, kind of like you said you were a commander when you retired. I retired as a command senior chief. So I was an early select command, and now the command senior chief is responsible. So I was the command senior chief of the USS Freedom, which is the small littoral combat ship. It's basically a 387-foot jet boat. So that has about 80 crew members on board. And that was just rewarding to be able to even though I didn't make E9, I made the highest position that you can be in the Navy. And that's what gave me kind of the justification to get out before making Master Chief, because my last evaluation, my captain wrote in there, the most underpaid command Master Chief in the fleet. And so that just kind of told me that, if I were to stay in, I'm just going to keep doing the same job over and over and over and over. So I've always been one, the reason why the Navy and the military was good for me is because I have idle hands. I don't like doing the same thing for very long. I like trying new things. And the military was great because every 3 years I got to do something new. And now that's also probably why now I get a little antsy. And that's the reason why I've already turned my real estate business over to my son, which has been a blessing in its own right. Because, what better person do you ever want to be able to have is turn over something you've built to your own offspring. And then now I'm building a new business and I'm writing a book. And so now, I'm constantly trying to evolve and do better for myself and my family.
It kind of sounds like you like the workup and the build-up process.
I do.
And then once it's operational, all right, what's the next new thing we can stand up?
I love building. And I think that's why I'm so attracted to being an entrepreneur, because there's no, how many times have you been either at a command or a job and you're like, well, it's his fault or it's their fault and I inherited this and I have nobody to blame but myself. And so if my business fails, then the buck stops with me. So it's very rewarding when you build something and there's no one to blame, but you get all the rewards, but you also get all the crap too. So,
where were you at on 9/11?
don't we all know exactly where that was? I was in Sicily. I was a bodyguard at the time, and it actually is one of the reasons why we were able to kind of rebuild the team. Is we had a new admiral. Of course, that one admiral that got dimed out, he did get relieved of duty, and so the new admiral came in, but he didn't want to change things at the point. But then 9/11 happened. I was literally so we basically started by, they brought me back from being the facilities manager to just being a driver, and I was just his driver. And so at the time, we had finally gotten to the point where we were just getting ready to get NCIS to endorse us. And we were sitting at the tarmac waiting for the admiral to land when it happened. I remember distinctly seeing television sets with the Twin Towers on fire. I was there watching it live when the second airplane hit, because remember, we were 6 hours ahead from New York time. So the 9 a.m. was 3 in the afternoon for us. And so we were very much there watching it live when the second plane hit. And of course, everybody, what's happening with this world? Is this beginning of World War III? Nobody really knows. And so those are, a couple of days of that. So we had just gotten guns, but we weren't allowed to carry them. We kept them in our trunk. Right. It was kind of a, stepping stone to rebuilding the team and building the trust with the admiral and stuff. But yeah, that's when that happened, we armed up, and that kind of facilitated, all right, now we got to ramp up security again now. And that's when we went into lockdown all over the world with all the military installations, because we didn't know. And it was a very, very trying time being forward deployed. Was there, as in general for an MA, once the desert kicks off, the 20 years that we spent there, are there, I'll call them shore-based or land-based assignments, or is everything primarily for an MA still ship-based? No, believe it or not, there's roughly, at least, I don't know the current numbers. I've been out for almost a decade now, but back when I was in, there was, after 9/11, the MA rating was very much more the training. It was only about 1,200 to 1,400 MAs in the entire Navy. And then we had all the other source ratings. That would be a shore duty for them. They would go get what's called the 9545 NEC to be basically a cop for the Navy, just for one duty station. The MAs were the trainers, right? Well, after 9/11, they realized we can't have part-time law enforcement and security. So we went from 1,400 MAs to 12,000, right? And really beefed up quickly. And like when I became an MA, man, I had to submit a package that was thicker than this book and had to get selected by a board. After 9/11, they're like, oh, you got a pulse? Come on. And, it's like with anything. It's the knee-jerk reaction. Now, it's gotten a lot better over the years. But at first, it was really challenging because there was no vetting, really, to bring MAs in there. And so the number of ships the number of MAs required on ships didn't really change. All of the shore-based positions and overseas positions exploded. So basically, the MA was our seashore rotation. It was essentially CONUS, OCONUS. You had to almost fight to get a ship as an MA because there just wasn't that many billets compared to the number of MAs we had. Now, when you sign on the dotted line, submit your packet, you're an MA, do they send you to outside federal, like FLETC, like an outside, or is it all in-house within the Navy? No, it's actually, the Navy actually has none of its own. We use the Air Force for our first school. So, I mean, we still have Navy, but we go to Lackland Air Force Base in San Antonio for our first school. And then most of our C schools, of the follow-on schools, because I became a military police investigator, so detective essentially, and then I also became a military police or a protective service specialist. Both of those programs are run by the Army. So I went to Fort McClellan for my investigator school and Fort Leonard Wood, or Fort Lost in the Woods, for my protective service school. And using Norfolk as an example, huge naval base, or San Diego, largest naval base in the world.
Is there, when you're an MA assigned there, is there any type of joint duty with local law enforcement?
They have then just like with anything, they have government contractors that are out of the larger installations, and that actually was a big thing of contention. You being a cop, you'll appreciate this story. Yes, we had DOD cops right now. Thanks for all they do, but there was just like with anything, they had a really hard time when they were bringing MAs into it because they felt that we were there to take their jobs. So it was a big kind of, at the time, that would have been 2006 to 2009. I was actually the operations chief for the Naval Station Norfolk. So we had a huge security department, I think 400 security personnel with DOD. And one time, and my job was to integrate the MAs into the security department. And we got so much pushback from, because remember, they were unionized, right? Got so much pushback. To the point where one time I got my guys approved to go out and go on patrol. One of the DOD officers, I kid you not, pulled over one of the other units and tried to arrest him for impersonating a police officer.
On the base?
On base. That's how contentious it was. But we worked through it, and eventually it did get better. But that's an example of how, integrating things. And that's when you go back to what I love to do. I always, if I'm going to do something, I want to make sure I leave it better than when I got it. And so I took a lot of pride into actually integrating the MAs into the full-on security department after 9/11.
At that time, before the integration, what was the primary mission set of each one? And was it a conflicting mission set in the sense of, hey, that's our area, you stay out, and this is our area, you stay out kind of deal?
Yeah. So the DOD police officers, they always thought that it was a great idea. They thought they were the cops and all the MAs were gate guards. That's what they felt it was. Now,
got it.
That's, of course, not what it is. And I always used to, try to explain to them, like, look, guys, our guys are not just gate guards, because every single one of us are law enforcement. But remember this, you can always make a cop a gate guard. You can't only train a gate guard and expect him to be a cop. So we have to teach them all the fundamentals. And yes, we'll take turns doing the boring things like standing gates, but it's all hands on deck and we're going to take turns.
Going back to the kid who went in, didn't really like the structure of the Navy, definitely didn't like it coming out of boot camp and not getting what you thought you were going to get, go to A school. I'm not going to sit in front of a radar screen for my entire career. But through all of the 24 years, you mentioned at the 24-year mark, you're like, okay, I'm pretty much tapped out. There's no reason for me to keep going. But getting to that 24-year mark, was it easy for you? Or was there really a period like, man, hey, honey, I might be 12 years in or whatever, but I don't think I can go 20.
No, absolutely, man. I think most people can relate to that. I think it was there was probably 3 different times that we were planning to get out of the Navy, and sure enough, just like with they right as you're making that decision, they're like, "Oh, congratulations, we're promoting you." They put that carrot out there, like, "Oh, okay, well maybe we'll sign up for another year." And then it is a true thing. Once you pass that 10-year mark, that's kind of the poop or get off the pot moment. And so I think I was planning to get out to my first tour, planning to get out to my second tour. By the third tour, we were on the fence because that was kind of like, 10 to 12 years, you either decide to get out or you just stay in for the long haul. And around that time, we just made that ultimate, I think, because I made chief in just under 11 years. And so that was right when we were going to re-enlist. And I was like, I made chief now. Let's go ahead and finish it out. And honestly, best decision of my life, because the benefits of a full career in the military, probably similar to the law enforcement, they way out benefit, getting out early. Because like right now, my family gets medical benefits. It's such an unsung benefit is the medical. I get I know people who spend $1,000 a month for their entire family. I pay $700 a year, $700 a year for my entire family.
If I could be the voice of reason from the law enforcement side of the house, my entire career, whenever lifetime medical seemed to come up as part of negotiations, I'll say the younger men and women opted for the cash now instead of the cash later. And so the organizations that I work for, that I retired from, do not have lifetime medical, which man, now that I'm retired, I was like, boy, I wish I had that.
Well, I want to talk about that too, because I think that's a great topic. That, you know, what you just said with the law enforcement community. There's a new thing. Have you heard that there's a new retirement program for the military members that started, I think, like 8 years ago, 10 years ago?
It's the very overview of what I've heard about is more like a 401k.
It is. Yes, absolutely. All right. So I want to bring this up because this is all about transitioning, and this is something that's just not being talked about. The reason why they passed the law to change it to a blended retirement is, on paper, it actually is better. You're going to make a lot more money leveraging compound interest in a 401k concept, or the TSP as it's called, over the lifetime, and the government's matching you 5%. I mean, that is, if you know how to manage it, man, you can really bank and schedule it. But here's the problem. What you just said. If you give a youngster the option to decide if they can keep an extra 5% of their pocket to go out party on the weekends, or if they're going to, you know, spend money investing in something that they won't see until they're 57, of course not. So here's the crappy part. Congress did this on purpose. They passed it saying looks good on paper, but they're banking on those young sailors and young Marines and soldiers to not take advantage of it, which is going to save the government money. But they don't talk about that. And let's talk about another issue too. I started getting retirement check the minute I got out of the military. Now, it's not nearly as much as I could get if it was in a 401k when I retire at 57, but it's a decent amount of money that I get money for the rest of my life. Now, I was a master in arms. If it really came down to it, I can get out. I could have maybe come work for you, right? How many retired military members come work after they get out as police officers? A lot of them.
From my old organization, few, only because of the federal state issue for law enforcement. But a
lot of people do.
Yes.
Okay, but in other words, it's a transferable skill, and there's different branches. Like Air Force, a very technical branch. Cool. If you work electrical, you're going to get a job on the outside. If you're in the Navy, there's almost every job in the Navy has a transferable skill to the civilian sector. What scares the living shit out of me, excuse my language, is these gun toters who join the military as gun toters, as infantrymen and stuff like that, who spend an entire career like taking that hill. What are they going to do when they get out and they don't get a paycheck and the only thing they know how to do is carry guns? Okay, maybe someone will get a contract with Blackwater or something like that. But otherwise, what are they going to do? Mark my words, man, we're about 10 years into this. When you start seeing those guys retiring, you think we're going to have an issue on our hands with homeless veterans now? Stand by. We're on a roadmap to a train wreck when it comes to financial. And that's actually one of my motivations behind writing my book, is to educate people on the power and the need for financial literacy early on. So I just wanted to bring that up because there's so many people who don't talk about that kind of stuff these days.
Well, I think the other component to it is you take a young man, comes into the military, 18 years old, right out of high school. Mm-hmm. It's going to sound negative, but odds are they probably opted for the military because they didn't feel they had any other options.
True. That was me.
College either wasn't an interest or college was a lack of financial ability. You go in at 18 years old, maybe you screw up on your ASVAB. Maybe you think that your sign of manhood is being a grunt. Mm-hmm. Let's say you do one enlistment and you get tired of it. So you spent 4 years pounding the ground, not building any skill set that really transfers for you. And now you're 22, 23 years old with really no objective or perspective for your future.
Yep.
Let's compound it even more. Let's say you do 2 or 3 enlistments. So now you're into that early 30s. You've got enough age on you where you're kind of settled into your own way of thinking. Mm-hmm. You're also ingrained and indoctrinated into the military of how the military does things. And you come out and it's a difficult transition. I've talked to so many guests who come out of the Marine Corps, mm-hmm. Whatever it was, and they get their first job and they're like, I went into that place like I was a Marine. And everybody looked at me like I was a leper. And I could not get along with anybody. So it's a real weird balancing act.
Absolutely.
We need young men and women coming into these careers. But the problem is they spend 20 or 30 years into them, completely changing their way of thinking and their way of doing things compounding it if they spend 20 or 30 years with a skill set that doesn't have much carryover.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I tell people all the time, when you're in the military, the military does a great job of kind of keeping you in a bubble. And, you think you know everything you need to succeed because you can spend an entire career and the things you need, they're provided for you, right? When I got out, man, I feel like I've been drinking through a fire hose for the last 9 years. To this day, I'm still learning about things that I'm like, how come I did not know about this while I was in the military? And so I'm very much a big advocate of reaching down onto the deck plates and educate them one at a time if I have to say, look, there is going to be a life outside of this. The military is going to let you go one way or the other. You don't get to ride off in the sunset. You're either going to get out when you decide to get out, or you're going to get out when the military says that you've timed out because you got too old, right? And it's not crazy old either, right? If you really think about it, what's the longest? If you become like an admiral, you might do 40 years. Okay, so you're doing 60. Okay, that's a decent retirement age. But most enlisted people, you have higher tenure. If you don't get promoted, even if you make Master Chief, you have to get to working for a certain, flag officer to go beyond 30. If you don't make 9, you have to get out at 26. If you don't make 8, you got to get out at 24. If you don't make, so there's higher tenure that if you don't make milestones in your career, they're letting you go. So why would we not educate people to be prepared for that transition? Because we don't always know what it's going to be. So I always try to say this. You decide on your exit strategy. Don't ever rely on the military to be that exit for you, because it will never end up the way you want it.
And I would say I'll give it a negative, especially the military. When you keep your people in a bubble, you talk about they went to this 401k platform because they're gambling that the greater majority of the younger men and women coming into the service are going to opt for give me the cash now.
Yep.
The same way I would say they probably deal with their day-to-day. If I've got to deal with giving my men and women information that then makes them put in a request to transfer, a request to go do something else, I'm constantly dealing with a level of proficiency dropping or not being where I need it to be. If I keep them in their bubble, then I keep the level of proficiency up. Mm-hmm. And so in a weird way, it's from a business perspective, they make the decision, because I've actually been surprised, like you just said, mm-hmm. how few come out of the military and they didn't know X, Y, and Z. And you would just think that I've had former Navy SEALs on, and I've had people who went into the Navy not knowing about the Navy SEALs mm-hmm. and having to learn about it once they were in. And you're like, how did you not know?
I know.
And it just, I think part of it too is on us individually. If we don't have an interest in something, it could be right in front of our nose and we're not going to see it.
Yeah. And so true, man. And that's the reason why, that is, for the last decade since I retired, I've been trying to figure out what my passion, what really drives me, what really gives me energy. And so literally I look back and I realized, and that's the reason why I kind of landed on financial literacy, because man, did I friggin' have to learn the hard way through the military, right? I'm the guy who I made every financial mistake you can make because I did not have the knowledge. I was the guy that racked up $40,000 worth of credit card debt. And I'm paying and I can only afford to pay the minimum payments. And so literally, if you pay the minimum payments on a credit card, you will never pay them off because you're just paying the interest. And so I was that guy caught in that. I was the guy that got the high interest car loan because they got the payday loan sitting outside the base. They have all the, oh yeah, low credit, zero credit, no problem. Come by with us. And so I've been through all this. So when I decided to write this book and really focus on this particular facet, it's very rewarding because now you get to see people's eyes, open up. Now, not everybody's open to it. And sometimes you talk to somebody one day and they kind of closed off. And then maybe a year later they go, oh, and they remembered something I had said or passed on to them. And that's where I think that if we can just really focus on that one thing that gives you energy, and that's what my thing is now. Like statistically, only 7. So I think we talked about this, right? If you look at the divorce rate and the suicide rate, as you probably know, 60 to 70% of military members get divorced. And we have 22 service members that take their lives every day. That's on average. They actually think it's going to be higher, but let's just go with that. The number one factor, and yes, don't get me wrong, there's all kinds of PTSD factors in play with it, but the number one factor is financial security. A lot of service members, for example, take their own life because they don't feel like they can provide for the family. The guys are like, my job is to provide. And if they can't do that financially, that's a big burden on them. The divorce, number one cause for divorce, getting by financially, right? Gosh, man, I worked 2 to 3 jobs on active duty, man. I was a senior chief in the Navy working as Best Buy products with a bright yellow shirt, selling TVs. I did I was delivering pizzas for a living. I did all this because I wanted to provide a lifestyle for my family. And me and my wife, we made a conscious decision for her to raise the family and I would provide for the family.
Let's be honest. We're hard on our sunglasses, especially first responders and military members. They get dropped, scratched, left on the dash, or crushed in our gear bags. Frontline Optics gives you the same premium quality and eye protection without the high price tag. Sure, you can spend big money on the designer brands, but why should you? From polarized UV 400 lenses to anti-reflective and water-repellent coatings, every pair of Frontline Optics glasses is built to handle the demands of the job. And here's the best part. When life happens and they break, Frontline Optics has a no questions asked replacement program, even for prescription glasses. If that's not enough, Frontline Optics was founded by a firefighter, and a portion of every sale supports the First Responders Children's Foundation, helping the families of those who gave everything. If you're looking for sunglasses that look good, are built tough, and that come from a company that gives back, visit frontlineoptics.com and use the promo code TRANSITION10 to get 10% off your purchase. Frontline Optics, from a first responder for the front lines.
Man, again, it took me, when you get $40,000 in debt, it is hard to see the light into the tunnel. So I had to learn the hard way how to get out of it. And so I've learned a lot of personal life lessons that I like to pass on. I always try to disclose, I'm not a financial advisor. I'm by far not an expert in this. Okay, let's be real. I wrote my book because I'm that guy. I'm that guy that made all these mistakes that so many people don't want to talk about, that they're making the same mistakes too. So I wanted to be relevant. This is very basic stuff. How to build a budget, how to get out of debt, how to get and maintain good credit. And then let's go into a little bit more like higher level. How do you invest? What's the power of compound interest? And then yes, how do you leverage real estate and to build a generational wealth? And learn how to get passive income, because there's so many benefits out there for service members specifically, but there's no budget to tell them they exist. So my new company, Military Operated Real Estate, the whole concept behind that is every single real estate professional in our organization has to be military affiliated. So now they've walked a mile in their shoes. They have to go through our very robust training platform that we've developed for this, and then they have to prove that they have experience in the industry as well. But we take it one step further. We teach every one of our agents to be VSOs. You know what a VSO is? It's a veteran service officer. It's basically an expert for all things military benefits. So we've taught our agents to be those guys because I'll give you a good example of this. This happened about 18 months ago. I tell the story quite often. I was at a listing appointment going to, somebody said they want to sell their house. And I'm like, I always ask, why are you selling? Because I'm a big believer, like, if you don't have to sell, don't, right? That's where I tell people I'm a terrible realtor because most realtors want you to buy, sell. I want you to buy and hold and build wealth and then just send me business because I want the best for you. Well, sitting across the table just like this, and they're like, I'm like, why are you selling? They're like, oh, well, our son got accepted to UC Davis, and we just can't afford to send him to school, so we got to move, get the equity, and so we can send him to college. And I'm like, well, you're a disabled vet, right? He's like, yeah, I got disability rating. He's like, well, did you know in the state of California, your kid can go to any California university for free? Dude, I saw their eyes just well up. They started tearing right in front of me. They're like, holy crap. All it was passing on a little bit of information that changed their life. And so that was a light bulb for me that if we need to be a steward of the knowledge of these benefits to help these veterans get what they earned. And of course, they didn't even sell the house, which is, I'm good with, right? Because now we changed life. Now they send us business all the time, and they never even sold a house with us.
Playing devil's advocate, though, people sit on their phones all day long. Mm-hmm. There's got to be a little bit of self-motivation, though, to go try to find information. I get it. There's times where somebody says something to you, and you're just kind of like, "Whoa, I didn't realize that." But I also do believe that we can be better ourselves about just being, like you said, be a lifelong learner. Always be looking at the angles.
Mm-hmm. Look, so I would say this. I'm a big believer that everybody can choose their own path and decide how but let me ask you this. Does everyone have to go to school in the United States?
Up till 12th grade in theory.
Correct. Okay. We say that because as a society, we've agreed that education is important and everything else. So why is it that everything we just talked about with regards to financial literacy, why is it only 7 states in the entire country have any sort of financial education in the public school system? If we're required to learn the multiplication table, which I don't even think that's required anymore, if we're required to learn these basic fundamentals to be able to integrate successfully into society, why do we not teach financial education?
I'm going to answer it with a question. Say, have we ever?
No, we haven't.
And so then that goes back to the whole, whether you want to call it a conspiracy theory or whatever, but that the educational system, the elementary through high school, was merely created as a generational spot to create worker bees to go into the factories.
And yeah, there could be, that could be, of course, there's all kinds of talk with that. I would just go back to say, okay, if we as a society have accepted that you need to go to school, well, then maybe we just need to reevaluate what's important to be educated on and get away from the legacy stuff. And that's starting to happen. But, because right now, do you I love talking about this subject. Do people need to go to college anymore? Because
for certain, if you want to do a specific career, yes.
Absolutely, right? If you want to be a doctor or a lawyer or something like that, there is a gauntlet you must go to do that profession. Absolutely agree. For the record, that's one of the things I'm developing with military operated real estate is we are building that gauntlet and we're raising the bar for real estate professionals who specialize with serving our veteran community. So I'm trying to change in my small little space that I operate in. But if we want to take it from a bigger perspective, why are we not, if we're going to sit there and tell our, talk about going to college and stuff like that, why are we not putting more of the stuff that we need to know to get by in society, like financial education, like financial literacy, versus saying, hey, you need to go to college to be successful, right? Because look, 50 years ago, when we were kids, okay, I get it. The universities were the encyclopedia of all knowledge. If you wanted access to knowledge, you had to pay to go to college to get access to that knowledge. I will argue that I can actually challenge any professor with you ask me any question, I can get an answer in the palm of my hand with this device that we have. We are changing as a society, and it's changing rapidly. And I think the age-old thing of you need to go to college to be successful, it just depends on what you want to do. I think statistically right now, it's something crazy like 70% of graduates don't ever get a job in the degree that they graduated in. So, and then they get in debt. Now it's gotten so expensive even. Like I see guys that'll be $250,000 in debt with a liberal arts degree. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to bash on a liberal arts degree, but what is the practical application we get when you get out and you graduate? Same thing when we talked about with the skill sets in the military. If you work a skill set your entire career of something that's not transferable, what are you doing? So, I think that we as a society just need to put a little bit more focus on the fundamentals, especially with the introduction of AI and stuff like that. That's not going away. It's here to stay. So embrace it because it's not going away. But at the same token, get smart on the things that are going to truly affect you in your day-to-day life. And that's why I'm so passionate about financial literacy.
Yeah, I definitely agree that college, under a blanket statement of every kid should go to college, is not, I don't want to say it's not true, but it's not an accurate statement. You want to go down the rabbit hole. I saw an article a while back, and I don't know if it's true or not because I didn't put the effort into really digging into it. But I heard that the Vietnam War was a huge catalyst for the change in the number of students that were enrolling in college to avoid the draft.
Yeah. Truth. Yeah.
So I don't know if that's true or not, but that was where they really saw because prior to then, college was still very much for affluent kids or kids who wanted a very specific career.
Yeah. And college also, back when we were kids, you generally, you'd go to college, you'd get into debt a certain amount, but the cost was kind of equated to the fact that if you graduated, you got a good job, you generally got a job making more money than if you didn't go to college. And therefore you could pay off your student loans by the time you're in maybe your 40s and stuff. So you can then go on and ride off in the sunset by the time you retire.
Well, I think more kids from our generation, a greater number of them had a purpose in mind when they went to college.
Now they're just going to college for the experience.
Yes. And if you sit back and look at your degree and say there is no job market for this degree, it's your own fault if you end up $250,000 in debt and not able to find a job.
I agree. And now, don't get me wrong, I will also, by the way, I always play devil's advocate on both sides. And I can say there is something to be said for, especially with this current younger generation who they're saying the average child is not leaving their house until they're 26, sometimes 30 years old, is going to college to go learn independence. There is something to that. Is it worth $250,000? I don't know. That's a judgment call. So
I'm a firm believer in, and I don't know which of all the European countries, but the one that's jumping out of my head is I believe Germany offers free education for certain degrees.
Correct.
I don't know if it's across the board, all the degrees. One thing that I will say as a overall totality, the more educated your society is, I think the better the society is. Yep. So there is something to going to college to just further your education and to further your knowledge level, regardless of what degree you're going to go to, because every one of them has the first 2 years, which is basically just general ed, yep, and advanced general ed from what you were learning in high school. So I think there is an overall benefit to going to school. It's just a matter of being smart about it.
Yeah, and that's it, man.
And so not just using college, like you said, not going to college for the experience of college. Though I was watching the USC game recently, middle of the rain, and there was a section in the audience where there was a group of students out there without their shirts on, and as the game went on, it just kept growing. And I remember saying to myself, if I had a child who was at USC and I was paying all that money, I would expect them. I'd go, that's what I want you doing. I want you to have those kind of memories.
Yeah.
But at the same token, it's my job as a parent to kind of go, okay, what degree do you want? Well, I want to get a degree in 16th century English literature. What's that going to do for you on the outside world?
Yep. No, I agree. My son actually, got accepted and played Division I golf at San Jose State. He did that for a year. Why did he do that? Well, because that is a roadmap. He wanted to go play golf. He picked, he had a choice between like Cal State, San Marcos, or San Jose State. He went with the Division I higher level because, has the best chance to challenge him to go on. Well, he did that for about a season, and he came to me one day and he's like, Dad, this golf thing is just, it's a whole nother level. I'm starting not to enjoy it. I mean, it's nonstop. And so that helped him decide. So he he quit the golf team. That was a big boy decision, his decision. Because I always told him, I will push you to be as good as you want to go as long as you still want to do it. He chose he didn't want to do it, so he didn't. So then he took some business classes. Now he didn't stay in to get his degree, but actually what it did do is he went there and goes, hey, I'm really digging this business stuff. So he reached out to me. He's like, Dad, I'm going to make a decision. I think I'm going to drop out. And if you'll let me, can I come try business with you? And of course, I'm not that guy that I do not believe in when business is business, family is family. I'm like, all right, son, we can give it a shot, but I want to be clear. There's no favors here. Like, for example, when he first started with me, I made him my admin bitch for about a year. He hated it. But he ended up sticking it out. And then once he did that, then he got his real estate license. Then I made him a showing agent. Then he did the listings. So I made him do every facet of the business. Like he went through the gauntlet. I was probably harder on him than I probably would have been just a regular employee or a staffer. But look at him now. The guy, he literally last year took over the business and he's absolutely crushing it. As a matter of fact, this year, the Winfield group here in Southern California, he's doing to crush every record I ever did in the industry. So, and they always say the only people you truly want you to do better than you in life are your kids. And man, I want my kids to crush everything I ever did in life.
I go back to the movie. Was it Back to School with Rodney Dangerfield?
Yes. Great
Sitting
movie.
in that business class.
Yes.
And it makes me say to myself, if I'm going to take a business class, I expect my professor to have owned a business.
Yeah.
Now,
True.
you don't have to have succeeded. I can learn just as much from you if you're like, hey, I did this and failed my ass off.
Yep.
But I think back to that movie, and this tenured professor who's probably never been in the business world, who went academic, and Rodney Dangerfield is just throwing out all of the side notes,
Yep.
And a very staunch professor. Well, in your world of mafia kickbacks and grift, and it's like, but there's a reality to what a textbook says owning a business is and operating a business, and there is the knowledge base from having done it.
Absolutely. It's the reality of it, right? Again, going back to the financial side of the house, here's a good example of this. In the military, if you go to your boss, say, hey, I'm struggling financially, I really need some help. Okay, great. Go see the command financial specialist. They're going to tell you how to get build a budget. So you go to command financial specialist. Now you ask them what qualifies them to be a command financial specialist. Well, they go to the Fleet and Family Service Center and they go through a 2-week or 1-week course being taught by somebody getting paid minimum wage to teach financial literacy to the command financial specialist. So I jokingly say it's kind of the blind leading the blind, right? I couldn't agree with you more, right? If you're going to teach something, have the experience to teach it.
Taking you as an example, or going back to your military career, was San Diego your longest duty station, or is that just where you EAS'd out of?
It is the longest place that I've stayed in a town for any extended period of time, because my entire career is Norfolk, Greece for a year, Norfolk, Italy, San Diego in 2009, and so I was on active duty for 7 years. But here's the crazy part: I'm institutionalized. Do you know I still to this day have never lived in the same place more than 3 years in a row?
Wow.
And that is even 9 years after retirement. So even after I retired, I've moved 3 times since. Now, the only thing I got going for me is the house that I'm in now up in Fallbrook. I've owned it since 2013. I lived in for 3 years, moved twice, and then moved back to it. So I'm back in the house that I bought over a decade ago, but I've only lived there a total of 6 years, but never more than 3 years in a row.
Coming to the end of your career, were you putting plans in place? Did you have an idea what you were going to do when you get out?
Yes, I had already been dabbling in real estate. So I got introduced to real estate when I moved here in 2009. I got my real estate license in 2011. So I had my license for about 5 years before I retired. And so, yes, I got out with the intention of doing full-time real estate, and I did. And, when you really focus on something full-time, it really blew up for me. So I did. I built a pretty successful real estate business here in Southern California. But to the point when I said that I get idle hands, after about 7 years of doing that, I got a little antsy, and I never want to do something unless I can really say my energy's all in with it. And I started to lose a little bit of energy. And it's actually kind of funny. My son and I were both invited to speak at this national real estate conference in Denver last month. And so it was great to be able to share a stage with my son. But I basically opened for my son. He came up 2 speakers later, and his entire speech was about imposter syndrome. And about how I walked in one day. He literally started his speech. He's like, imagine, working for your dad, and one day he walks in and says, "Yep, I'm done. It's all yours." And that is kind of how I did it. I kind of got idle hands, and I was just kind of I was burning out, and I didn't want my clients to feel that. So I walked in one day and I said, son, this is all yours. But he had followed me around and did a lot of the stuff with me, but he was ready. And so I said, it's time for you to fly. I'm pushing you out of the nest. And he's been crushing it ever since.
For somebody who might be thinking about, hey, I want to put my toe in that water, maybe get my license before I get out, start getting into it. For you, and you've already kind of laid the groundwork that you have a bit of that All right, I've gotten settled. I've gotten comfortable. I don't want to be comfortable. I want to always kind of feel like I'm on the ice skates, on greased ice skates, in a weird analogy.
Yeah, absolutely.
But what advice would you have, and what did you see after that 7 or 8 years of really on it full time that started to become uninteresting to you? I'll put it.
Well, I think, that's just it though. If I see a problem, the one thing I do love is if I see a problem, I like to give a solution. I don't like to be part of a problem. I like to be part of the solution. And so this is true statistics in the real estate world. In the state of California specifically, 1 in 130 people have a real estate license. You can throw a rock into a crowd, you're going to hit at least one. We have a industry that's has a reputation second only to used car salesmen, right? And
which is a dying breed.
Yeah.
I don't think you see used car lots anymore.
Not as many, no. Not with the introduction of Carvana and all these things going on right now. And so we have an 87% failure rate in the real estate industry. Because a lot of people get their license like, I love that industry. I want to get my license. They get in, they don't realize the hardest part of the industry. They're like, I love showing homes. I love real estate. Well, that's great, but anybody can show homes. It takes a lot to get people to trust you with the largest financial decision of their life. And so a lot of people, like, I'll give you an example. Take a guess what percentage of all licenses, 1.6 million real estate agents in the country. Take a guess what percentage sold 0 homes last year.
I'll say 60%.
71% sold 0 homes. Our industry turns over almost 90% every 5 years. So, and what's the number one reason? Why? Well, it's hard to get into business. So one of the ways that I want to be a part of the solution is military operated real estate is basically a training institute exclusively for military affiliated agents. The only way to walk in our front door is you have to either be a veteran, active duty, or military dependent who's lived the military life. So I want to qualify that. There's, God bless them, there's spouses out there that said, my husband served in the military. I'm a military spouse. Great. When did you get married? Last year. When did he serve? 20 years ago. That doesn't count. Sorry. You've not dealt with packing up the kids by yourself. You've not dealt with learning the lingo of the military and how it works. So I wanted to create something special, and I've gone one step further. We are currently. You ever heard of SkillBridge by chance? Mm-hmm. So we are a SkillBridge approved national real estate company for SkillBridge. So somebody's transitioning out of the military, they can go to a more certified agent or team or brokerage in our network. And we can endorse them to basically go full-time paid internship for up to 6 months before they transition out of the military. So they get basically all the pay and benefits, but instead of going off to the Army or Navy for the last 6 months, they're working for that real estate company or team under our supervision, going through our training curriculum. This is still in development, but what I'm really excited and proud of, and it's still in development right now, I'm currently only approved in California, but we're working on this nationally. I'm also the only real estate company in the country that's approved with the Department of Veterans Affairs. So a service member can use their education benefits like the GI Bill or their VOC rehab or dependents with their DEA. They can use their education benefits instead of going to college. They can do on-the-job training with us after getting licensed for up to 18 months. So they get a housing stipend that gives them that kind of financial safety net while we teach them how to build their business. And that to me is a true game changer in our industry. Now, again, that piece is still very much in development. We're only, again, in California, but we're working on a national approval. But that's the kind of an example of what we're doing to do things differently. The other thing that we're doing is we don't, with our company, we're also trying to solve the financial or the spousal unemployment crisis we have. Do you know what the national unemployment rate is for in the United States as a whole? About 3 to 4%, roughly. 3 to 4%. This COVID was much higher, obviously, but right now we're down to about 3 to 4%. Do you know what it is for the military spouse?
I'm going to, right off the top of my head, just say significantly higher, but
30%. So think about that. 1 in 3 military spouses out there are unemployed, not because they don't want to work, but who wants to hire somebody that they know is going to be moving in the next 3 years? Or, they got to stay home and raise babies. So one of the programs we're developing is called our More Ambassador program. And that is designed where we can make our military spouses or active duty members, get licensed and become referral agents. So they make the connection and they connect the consumer to our more certified agent, and they get a percentage of the commission that contributes to their household income. So we're really excited about that program. And then the other program that we're really excited about is we're taking my book, actually, and we're converting it into an online courseware that's going to be client facing. So we are a full on institute, and we're going to be developing course curriculum for financial education. So how many, think about how many times people, if only 12% of the eligible 21 million veterans and active duty members have ever used their VA home loan benefit, my research has shown that 80% of service members are just not financially sound to purchase home. Not that they don't want to, they just can't, they're just not in a position to. So we wanted to create a pathway that if somebody said, well, I want to buy a house. Oh, well, sorry, you're not approved. Well, cool. Well, we're not forgetting about you. We're going to get you from A to Z. And we're providing courseware for that. And then we're also developing courseware. So let's say you did own a home. We're actually developing courseware to allow service members to manage their own properties and build wealth. And there's so many hacks out there that we just want to be that go-to person, that go-to company for all things military when it comes to relocation.
I know especially from the first responder community, the trend right now is getting away from the big cities, getting out into the rural areas. But if somebody's kind of got that plan for their future, but is also thinking real estate, do they work together? Because I'm thinking that if you're out in the middle of nowhere, it's kind of hard to generate clients.
I live there. You familiar with Fallbrook at all? Mm-hmm. I live deep in Duluth. Like I stare at the backside of Camp Pendleton. And again, I've lived there for a total of 6 years of my, almost 15, like half of my real estate career, I've lived up there rurally. Especially in today's world, you can absolutely live rural because we've become such a virtual world that I do Zoom calls, and then I drive a little bit further, but I go out and belly to belly and meet people and network and all that. So I don't think rural life is a discriminating factor on if you want to build something, you just got to be prepared to design it. Like I have a full on man cave office at home. So that way, and it's downstairs away from my wife, kind of how we talked about how that's important to segregate. So I have a full on space that I work out of. So if you're going to do it, you just got to make sure you do logistically set up so you can work from home if that's what you choose to. Because if you want to live rural and, you want to live in an office, well, then you might need an office. You're going to be just doing the commute from the rural position down into town. So it depends on how you want to set it up.
I want to go two directions. I want to go a little bit more into the book, but I want to bring it back around to your trauma and when it reared its head. Which do you want to hit first?
Let's dive into that, man. That's always fun.
When did you first start experiencing or notice the symptoms?
Well, I think you need to go a bit further back. And I'm a big believer in talking about trauma as one of the biggest therapies. So I'm very, very open about some of my trauma. So mine goes back to the military where I did get my PTSD. It was the primary trauma. There's been a few of them, but the primary trigger that caused it, I was stationed in Sicily. I was the watch commander for the security department, and I was in charge of 2 different sections. So I was the operations chief, and I happened to be off that day, but I had given one of my sailors, approved him to take the day off, and he was going to hang out with my other supervisor's son. So you remember, these young kids, when they're the same age as dependents. So I had a 20-year-old active duty service member and a 20-year-old dependent. They became friends. Well, they wanted to go play paintball. So they went off and everything, thought nothing of it until I get a call. Chief, there's an accident. So go out there, sure enough, head-on collision right outside of base. And it was my sailor and my other sailor's son killed instantly. And, you being a cop, I'm sure there's a lot of faceless victims out there, right, that you deal with. And, you can talk about them, you can't unsee things. But when you know the people, it's a lot harder. And I end up having that day when we responded, we're talking, everybody knows everybody on that base. So the first responders, the ambulance drivers, the security, everybody's just like losing their crap. And I had to process the accident scene because my guys, they're crying and doing all kinds of just emotionally having a hard time with this. So we kind of had to lift them up, and I had to be the get everybody together. And, there's visions that you can't unsee, of course. And I don't need to tell you that with the experiences you've had. But then, so we processed everything. And now fast forward, you have So we just lost that sailor. They have assigned me to be the CACO. Are you familiar with the CACO is? It's a Casualty Assistance Calls Officer. So it's the person that the command assigns to escort the remains of a
That's what I was
service
going to.
member.
I know it's got to do with like the connection to the family.
Correct. It's there though. So you have a couple of different versions. You know, you have one with the family, and you have one that actually transports the remains back home. I was assigned to do that. So now, fast forward a couple of days, I go in to see my boss, my assistant security officer. I'm like, and he's like, oh, well, Chief, you know, we're going to be doing the memorial ceremony on Friday. And I was going to be gone. I wasn't worried about me. But I'm like, Lieutenant, that's not okay. We're working that day. Our guys need to grieve. They need to be there. You can't schedule this. And I lost my crap. I lost my shit. I went off on him. How dare you? And I screamed at him. I stormed out. And got on an airplane, went to Naples, bodies getting embalmed, the whole thing, getting ready to leave. And I get another call. Lieutenant is missing. My boss that I chewed out. And he's like, I think you were the last one to speak to him. Any idea what happened? And I'm like, well, I explained everything. And they're like, well, he's missing. So the big manhunt. They end up finding him the next day where he went and hung himself on the side of Mount Etna. And what's weird is that to this day, I remember him. He was Lieutenant Dugas. I remember his, but to this day, I cannot tell you my sailor's name. I've been diagnosed with some kind of selective amnesia or something like that, where my my brain puts up like barriers where, I've been told 100 times his name. I couldn't tell you his name today. So, and I'm talking, they flew in shrinks from all over the country to help everybody, right? It wasn't just about me. It was everybody. It was traumatic for everybody. It was a big loss, right? You know, we lose three of our family members in a matter of 3 days. That was a big trigger for me. That's what kind of started my challenges that I've had with PTSD and stuff like that. Now you fast forward. Now, so I've, seen therapists and stuff through all that, and I've gotten a lot better. But then when you get out of the military and you get into entrepreneurship, you realize the world is your oyster. You're no longer in the confines of the bureaucratic bubble, if you will, of the military. And you realize, oh my gosh, I can do anything I want. Like the world, I can do anything. So next thing you know, I get into business. Start doing well in real estate. And then I'm just yes, man. Oh, hey, you want to do this? Yes. You want to do this? Yes. You want to do this? Yes. And I'm started doing everything. And I'm running a real estate team. And then I got offered to be a partner and build a national brokerage. So I'm doing that. And then I became the vice president of a non-for-profit called the Enlisted Leadership Foundation. That was my philanthropic way of giving back to active duty service members and teach them leadership and financial literacy through that platform. And if I didn't think I was busy enough, I thought it was a great idea to buy a brewery. So I don't know if you remember Inland Warp Brewing Company on Jefferson.
I'm vaguely familiar with it.
It was just past 8-bit. Well, I purchased that after COVID with the idea, it's going to be the roaring 20s. Everybody's going to want to drink after COVID, and it's going to be a great investment. Yeah, that was a terrible decision. Terrible financial decision, terrible life decision. And then so what had happens is I'm now burning the candle at 4 different ends, not just 2. I'm like all over the place, trying to run a couple of 3 different businesses and then a non-for-profit. And then life happens. So in January of 2022, my stepmother, who helped raise me and married to my dad, passes away. Then a neighbor really close to us, he passes away. Then we have a horse. We have horses on our property, and we had a horse have colic and passed away that summer. And then in September of that year, my grandmother, who lived an amazing life. She's 91 years old and everything else, but she was on her deathbed. I flew back. My mom wanted to support. Remember, I'm an only child, so I was there to support her. And I won't go into too much detail, but if you can visualize this, so here's the bed, and my grandmother's on literally her deathbed, and we're taking turns as a family being with her, so we didn't want her to pass by her alone. So I'm on watch, and my aunt comes in, and she's like, and we just talking and stuff like that. And without going into too much details, because it's a lot of personal family stuff, but she disclosed a very, very deep, dark family secret that I was not aware of. And it turns out the entire family was aware. And it involved people that had already passed, who I can't come to terms with. And So I battled through that time, and by the way, when she tells me this, if you can visualize this, she's sitting here and she's telling me this, and I'm like awestruck. And then I kid you not, I look over and my grandmother takes her last breath right as and it's almost like she heard the conversation. She's like, all right, I'm done. I'm out. And so that was really tough experience. I got through it for my mom's sake, and I was still her rock. But when I got home from the funeral, Paul, it's hard to describe this. And there's a lot of us who've been through this. So if you've been through this, you can relate. I became physically disabled. I became so weighted down with anxiety and depression and everything that I felt like literally the world was like holding me down and smothering me. And I'm an extrovert. I mean, you could tell I don't mind. Don't give me a mic. I could talk all day. I did not leave my house for 3 months. Hardly at all. A couple of times I did, like for example, I'm supposed to be the guy. I was supposed to be like the MC of some event. The days of, I'm literally having to cancel the day of, because I'm like, I'll get through it. And I wake up, I physically could not leave the house. So I ended up, but I don't like being a victim. So I did everything, man. I finally broke down and I was like, I need help. So I started doing therapy. I went to see a shrink. I got put on meds to help offset some of my depression, which did help for the time. I was going on long walks. I even went to Reiki healing, man. I was doing everything I could. I was meditating, doing everything I could to get through it. But it took a while. It took about 3 months, and it was probably the hardest thing. And one of my therapists once said, he's like, Travis, you've been dealing with this for a long time. The problem is you've been ignoring it. And if you ignore your body for too long, it will take over and it'll flip a switch on you. And that's exactly what happened to me. I got that switch flipped on me, and I became a basket case. If it was, God bless my family, man. My son held down the fort with the business. My wife was there. If it wasn't for my family, I don't know where I'd be. I'm not going to say I was never suicidal or anything of that nature, but I can tell you firsthand, if you don't understand the power that depression and anxiety can have on you, stand by if you ignore it too long. So I always advise people that if you're going through challenges and struggles, find some way, find an outlet, find some outlet that you can do to talk about it. Because it wasn't until probably, I think it was late November, early December, that I flew out to a very dear friend of mine's house in Florida. And I got an opportunity to go, me and my wife went to Tony Robbins' first in-person Unleash the Power Within event. And, Tony Robbins is a very gifted man in his own right. And after going that, and then with my friend, I give him a lot of credit for just being a sounding board. And that was my turning point. And I was able to finally come back from that and start to rebuild. And from that is where I go back to earlier in our conversation, that experience forced me to really put life into perspective. So after that, I literally came back. I resigned from the brokerage. I sold the brewery. I decided to focus on what truly was important, and that was a business that I was building with my son, and that was our team. And I still kept the non-for-profit, and because I still love pouring into others, and that became my life. So now I've learned, you can't do everything. You got to stay focused. You got to put blinders on. And, my friend that I told you that I went to stay with, James Becker, if you're listening, James, just thank you, bro. He always told me, Confucius says, he who chases 2 rabbits catches none. So just focus on catching 1 rabbit at a time. And that's what I do now.
I'll use the analogy of the noise.
Yeah.
And I wonder, was your SOP to chase all of these rabbits, different options, so that you were never still enough to where, and I'll use the analogy, it got quiet and the noise came in?
I think in hindsight, yes, but I cannot say that was a very overt intention at the time. I think at the time, I think when you're institutionalized in the military for so long, and you just do whatever you're being told, and then when you get out and you realize, oh, holy crap, you're free to do what you want to do in life. I think I just saw the opportunity and just started, freaking just chasing everything. And so, yeah, I do I do still to this day in hindsight think that I can't stand silence. My wife gives me crap all the time because I do get on doom scrolling from time to time, and I always need to do something. I'm the guy that's always like, my knees always shaking. I'm always like, I need to be doing something. And I think that's my thing. And everybody's different. But me, I feel like people like, are you ever going to retire? Look, I made a commitment to my wife that I want to be able to set myself up so that when, in the next now 4 years and 2 months, baby, if you're listening to this, that I will hang up the day-to-day grind. Will I ever truly retire? No, I that's just not in my human nature. I think I'm going to be able to, I have to do something, whether it be writing more books, whether it be doing public speaking or teaching or whatever. I will do something, but it'll be more of a on my time, not feeling like I have to, if that makes sense.
You making long-term plans for where your home base is going to be?
Yeah, we're actually, it's funny you should say that. We're actually hitting the road with our motorhome next year for a couple of months, and we're going to go explore. And we're empty nesters now. Both of our kids have moved out now and starting their own lives. And so now it's our chapter to explore ourselves. We're no longer raising babies now, so we're kind of figuring out our own style. And I think we're going to go out and explore and see where that takes us. And I think we've accepted the fact that we're kind of quasi nomads. There's a reason why we both are kind of like every 3 years, we kind of both get like, what's next? So I think that's what we're going to be doing. Is next year is going to be a year of exploration.
You think it'll be here in the United States? Do you think you'll go outside? Portugal's getting a little saturated right now.
It is. No, I don't think Portugal. I think Italy is always an option for us because we both loved Italy. We've talked about that quite a few times. That's not off the table. Costa Rica is an option. I think we just
there's
love
no
traveling.
expats in Costa Rica.
Yeah, I know, right? I think it's just a matter of we don't know until we know. And so that's why we just want to get out and explore. I think we have learned that, I know this sounds crazy. When you live in Southern California, they say it's anybody who says the weather is free has never lived here because there is a weather tax. But here's the thing that my wife said something to me last year. We were visiting my partner in Michigan this summer, and we got to experience a little bit of the four seasons again. And we go, we kind of miss the four seasons a little bit. And they're like, and people will say, well, that's crazy. The weather's so good there. I was like, yeah, but my wife said something to me. She's like, but doesn't it sometimes feel like Groundhog Day? I mean, think about that. Like, it is so good here that it's, we don't, do you remember that storm of 92? Like, we don't have that here really. It's just nice, which is pleasant. Don't get me wrong. And I know that sounds...
We don't shovel our driveway though.
We do not shovel our driveway. You're absolutely, like, there's so many amazing benefits here, but we're just, and who knows, we're not going to get rid of our house. This is going to be our home base. But I think what our goal is to go out and find somewhere that, number one, just quite frankly, also for tax purposes, California is not cheap to live when it comes to taxes. And with our military benefits that we have, it can go a lot further in other areas like Nevada. And there's states that, like, for example, you don't pay any property tax if you're a disabled veteran, or like there's certain states that don't have income tax. So there's things like that do play a factor, especially when you're building a business that pays a part in it. So, we're talking about maybe living like 181 days in like one of those areas and still having this place to come to still get a taste of the nice weather.
So we talked about your book. What's the title of it?
Military, Money, and More. And
what was the motivation behind it?
It's funny. The motivation started, actually, I can even tell you, there's a good friend of mine. He was actually the 15th Master Chief Petty Officer of the Navy. His name is Russ Smith. And remember I said to that point, like, I first got to know him during COVID. He was the Master Chief Petty Officer of the Navy. That's the most senior enlisted man of the service at any given time. There's only been 17 in the entire history of the Navy. And he was the 15th, and I used to teach this class called Military Money More as an online course. I taught it every month, and I invited him to come listen in. And he sat through it was only an hour long. And afterwards he goes, Travis, I was in the Navy for 37 years, and I know how to be a war fighter, and that's all I focused on. But in my entire career, I never saved, never purchased a home, and now I'm out and I have nothing to show for it. And he's like, why how did I just learn more in 45 minutes than I did in my entire career? And he goes, this needs to be taught in boot camp. So then, so after he told me that was late last year. And then so earlier this year, I just go, you know what? I need to finally get off my ass. And one of my old mentors said, you got to write a book. You got to write a book. And I'm like, man, I suck at writing. And so, but I finally broke down and I did it. And I did a lot of it dictation wise. I dictated my book. And then I, used editing to kind of make it so I don't sound like a bumbling idiot. All right. But that's my motivation behind it, is that if the Master Chief Petty Officer of the Navy says that, he should have had this, then imagine how many other people. And he actually allowed me to write an entire chapter about his story. It's the very last chapter of the book that explains kind of the why behind it. But it goes back to, like I said, the statistics. If over 80% of our service members are not financially sound to purchase a home. And believe it or not, military money and more being military operated real estate, I did not intend that to be in the name. It just happened to be, I created this, then I created more, and I go, oh, that kind of works out. It was a very unintended coincidence that the book name matched my new company's name.
Wrapping it up, anything that we haven't talked about that you want to make sure gets out there?
Yeah, no, not that we haven't talked about, man. This has been great, by the way, dude. I love this kind of conversation. I think more people need to do what you're doing and just having these just legit conversations. So I say keep doing what you're doing, man. I think if you move one person, and that's really my mission too. And I think we talked about this from the first talk. If my book or my company can positively affect one person, then it's done my job. And so I think the big thing is we just need to talk about it more. We need to educate, and we need to get people to understand that there is light at the end of the tunnel, especially with finances. And the reason why I'm so passionate about real estate, if you fought for our country, damn it, you deserve to own a piece of it. And my goal is to make every veteran a homeowner so they can own a piece of the land they defended.
I appreciate you sharing your story.
Thanks,
appreciate
man.
You sharing your time with me.
Appreciate it, Paul. Really
all the best
man.
Going forward.
Hey, well, listen, before we get off here, I do have something for you. So first off, obviously this book is for you, to put on your shame. I put a little note in there for you.
It is not shame. It is my wall of fame.
Wall of fame. And then, have you ever heard of a challenge coin?
Yes.
All right. So do you know the history behind the challenge coin?
Yes.
It goes back to World War II. Well, this is my own personal challenge coin.
Appreciate it, sir.
That represents my past in the military. If you I know you say you don't play golf, but if you happen to do, that middle piece actually pops out to be a ball mark.
Oh, okay.
The other side is my future of my business. And just in case you ever lose my phone number, it's actually on the edge of the coin.
I appreciate it, sir.
Anytime, man.
All the best.
You too.
As always, thank you for listening or watching the episode. If you have any comments or questions, feel free to reach out on social media or send me an email. The links are all in the show notes. I'd love to hear from you. Also, if you're not already, please follow the podcast on whatever platform you get your podcasts. You can also subscribe on YouTube. And if you would, please leave me a rating. Ratings do two things. You can tell me what I need to fix or improve, and the more ratings also gets the podcast recommended to more people. Another ask. Please share the podcast with anyone you think could benefit from and enjoy it. And last, don't forget, sign up for the newsletter.